What's up everyone, this is Nick from Myers Sewing. Today we're going to be talking about the Baby Lock Zest. You're probably receiving this video because you purchased one, and we're going to talk about how to use it. So first and foremost, what I want to start with are the names of the parts. You're going to get your machine and take it out of the box, and it's going to look very similar to this, the way I have it set up right now. So let's get a couple things out of the way. Here we've got your foot control and your lead cord or power cord combo. Set that to the side. We've got the instruction manual protected by some plastic, and on the back side a little quick start guide. Set that to the side. And let's talk about the front of the machine. So number one, we've got our reverse stitch lever. Just press that down to operate it. Up above it we have our selection of stitches, what you can actually stitch on this machine. Above it, we've got the stitch length dial, and to the left of that, the knob that actually changes those stitches on the menus here. Moving over, you have a thread tension dial that goes from 0 to 9. And then above here, as I move my hand wheel, you'll see we have the take-up lever, a thread guide where you would start. And all of these arrows on your machine also help you understand how to thread it, but we'll go over that again too. And we have a bobbin thread tension disc, which is used when you're winding the bobbin over here on this spindle, and a convenient little stopper next to it, so when you're done winding the bobbin, it'll slow down for you. These are the spool pins that hold the thread. There's 2 of them. And moving along to the side here on the right, we've got the hand wheel, and that spins as you're sewing, that's normal. It also oscillates in and out. You'll have it in the out position for winding the bobbin. The power switch beneath it, and then the machine socket where you make the connection with that foot control lead cord combo. Nothing on the back, but I did miss the carrying handle. Nice and convenient, bringing it to class or wherever you might be going with this machine. Down in the needle area, we've got a needle clamp screw to release the needle, to exchange your needle. We've got a presser foot lifter on the back here. Excuse me, pointed at the wrong spot. Here on the back, you've got the presser foot lifter, and then the presser foot holder, as well as the presser foot. So 3 different presser foot functions there. You'll see when I drop that off, the presser foot is by itself. And this is how you'll interchange your feet. Beneath that, you've got the needle plate with some guides on it, which we'll talk about later, as well as what we call our feed dogs. As we go to reveal the bobbin case area, we've taken off what we call the extension table, or otherwise known as an accessory storage compartment. Once we open this door, we reveal the bobbin case, the shuttle hook, and a secondary hook behind all that as well. So that covers all the parts. And what we're going to be moving on to next is the standard accessories that come with your machine. So let's talk about the accessories that come with your Baby Lock Zest. They are located inside this tray table. If you can't find them, pull this off, and then you'll reveal a whole bag of accessories. Pour these out. We can talk about them. So you're gonna get 3 bobbins with your machine. You're gonna get a seam ripper as well as a buttonhole cutter. It doubles as for both functions. A sliding buttonhole foot. A set of needles, and specifically the HAX1 needles. A blind hem foot. A zipper foot. And your darning plate. And now what we're going to talk about is getting ready to sew. So a couple things that we're going to go over. First, let's start at the basics, how to turn your machine on. You'll take the lead cord foot control combo that we talked about earlier and place it in the correct orientation in that socket and simply turn that machine on with the switch. Additionally, I did want to touch on the sewing speed. That is designated by the foot control and how much pressure, so you'll see as I increase pressure, is sent through it. Normally this is down on the ground. You get the idea. All right, let's turn it around. You'll see the light came on, verification that it is turned on. Move this down. Okay, so something I touched on when we were talking about the parts, but to give you a little more context on, is the presser foot lifter. And this has 3 different positions. You've got down, which is what you'll have when it's sewing. You'll have up when you're inserting the fabric, and if you need it, there's an extra high lift when you crank that up higher than that second position. That allows you to fit more fabric in there, as well as attach different presser feet. Sometimes that makes interchanging these feet easier as well. And when we want to go to put our new presser foot on, simply line it up and allow that clamp, I'll do that again there, to find its way onto the bar of the presser foot. They all have these little bars. So again, we'll just slowly bring that down into the correct position and it snaps into place. All right. Now we're going to talk about changing the needle. So this little screw here is what releases that needle. You just loosen it. You don't have to loosen it the whole way, just enough so that needle comes out. And all of our needles on the Baby Lock Zest are going to have a flat side. You'll see it when you buy your needles. And that flat side goes to the rear of the machine. Next, let's look at these spool pins. Just wanted to note that they escalate up and down. You're usually just using 1 spool of thread, but you can use 2 if you wanted a twin needle setup. And you can put the other down when you're not using it, when it's not in use. So this is where the thread will start. Let me grab one just to give you the idea. Just like that. All right. I'm gonna move around to the front and talk about removing and inserting the bobbin case. So down here, this is our bobbin case, and that has a little latch that allows you to remove it. As I do so, this comes out all the way, and you'll see that the bobbin is in there already. We don't have any thread on this bobbin, but once we do, we will use the wound bobbin and the spindle to locate and press it back in. Alongside that, we also have what we call the shuttle hook, which is revealed when we release these 2 black locking pins. And I usually just pull the hook along with the shuttle hook at the same time. So these are some parts that we service. They're important for our repair techs to analyze, but all they really need to mean to you is they need to be positioned properly. So your shuttle hook will fit into this kind of half moon shape. And then you'll take the cover again and place it back in where you can use these little setting pins to find the location, as well as the one down here. It might be hard to see on camera, but just down there at the bottom, point out again, down there, that helps you seat and find the correct placement. Then you just go ahead and lock these back in. That needs to happen before you put the bobbin case back in and before you can sew. Next, we're going to wind the bobbin. So place your thread spool up at the top and make your way to the bobbin winder spindle through that tension. I go 1 full rotation around. Depends who you ask. You can either just go 1 turn around, like a half turn I should say, or 1 full turn. Either way is fine. I like a full turn because it seems to make a tighter bobbin. And then what we're gonna do is grab our bobbin and insert it through the hole here on the inside of the bobbin, once I can get it to make it through. Oh, that's my mistake. I was looking at the wrong hole. There are 2 holes. There we go. And then make your way over to the bobbin winding spindle. And at this spindle, let me see if I can get this on camera. You want to move the bobbin until you hear that click. Again, I'll show you that. Hold the spindle, move the bobbin, until you feel or hear that click. That's going to ensure that it's not going to move on you. And then I grab my thread, couple winds around my finger. This is just how I was taught, but there are multiple ways. And then we move the bobbin winder over and the hand wheel out. All right. Just press on the foot control. After about 10 minutes or so, not 10 minutes, 10 seconds, you'll be able to clip the top there and then wind the bobbin fully. You'll see it's shaking a little bit, so I might want to slow it down. Each thread is different. All right, crank that back to the left, push that hand wheel in, cut your bobbin, and you can now leave that spool or remove it completely if you're changing colors and just lay it across the top there. So now we need to put the bobbin in the bobbin case. So the orientation matters, and what you're going to want to do is have your thread coming off in the form of a letter Q rather than a letter P. See how that looks like a P? We don't want it that way going into the bobbin case. We want the letter Q. So once that is set correctly, move it into the bobbin case and through the thread tension guide right there. All right. Once you hear and feel that, and it's made its way to this little U-shaped part of the bobbin case, it is locked in and there's tension on that thread. That's important so that when we're stitching, the thread is connecting through that fabric and it's even on both the top and the bottom. All right, so again, we'll just place that like I showed you earlier in the bobbin case area, and you audibly hear a click as well when that's locked in. Go ahead and close the bobbin case door, and now it's time to thread the machine. So grab our top thread, follow the arrows on your machine. Number 1 starts here, down to number 2, up to number 3. You always want to do this with the presser foot lifter up until you get down to this point. Once we get close to the needle, you can put the presser foot down to get some extra tension. I like to do it that way. It's how I was taught, so I can make it through these last guides and through the needle a little bit easier if there's more tension there. And with the Zest, you're going to insert the thread through the front of the machine. So magnifying glasses can help, or there are needle threaders you can find and purchase as well. And that's just going to make it through underneath and to the back of your presser foot and the machine. Now what we need to do is take the bobbin thread and move it up above the needle plate area. So what we'll do here is hold the back of your top thread, move your hand wheel towards you, down through the needle plate slowly so we can see how this works. And that's going to create a small loop. So now I'm pulling the top thread to reveal my bobbin thread. And then both of these need to be underneath and to the back. That's kind of a standard rule in sewing so that your stitches start out nicely and you don't have a loop or a tie-off stitch in the beginning. So as we pick up where we left off, we've got our machine threaded, and what I want to talk about next is how you would adjust some of the settings on the machine. So right up top here, we've got the thread tension dial. That adjusts only the upper thread, and that's really only the thread tension dial that you need to adjust by yourself. Our technicians will do the balancing of both the upper and lower tensions when you bring it in for your annual service. So this dial itself here is going to range from the number 0 up to the number 9, with 4.5, 9 divided by 2, being the midpoint. This is mainly where I find myself, is around a 4 to 5 tension zone, but each stitch is a little bit different, and we'll get into that in just a couple moments. Next, we've got the stitch selector dial up here, where you're going to just simply move it, and that will correlate with the stitch menu below. So A and B being a straight stitch, as we crank the selector towards C, it becomes a zigzag, and at the level C, or the setting C, it is at the widest zigzag. D is going to be the tricot stitch, and then so on and so forth. You also have, as we go back here, the buttonhole selections to the right of where your machine is going to be on default out of the box. Next, you have the stitch length, and that ranges from 0 to 4. Stitch length is how close stitches are to each other. So a very fine stitch where they're densely packed is going to have a lower number, somewhere probably between 0 and 1, whereas 4 is going to be closer to like what you'll see on a lot of leatherwork, denim, things like that, because it's a longer stitch length and it's generally used for clothing in that sense. Additionally, as you crank that further, you've got kind of this this nowhere land, a bit of a transition to the special stitch or the stretch stitch menu area. You'll see, if you're paying attention, that this is green and these are green. And so this directly correlates to these stitches. Whereas if I am on A, but I'm on this green selection here on the length, I'm actually performing the stitch below the black stitch on A. So it's a whole new menu of stitches when you're inside this small little minimized menu. So it's the same sort of adjustment here, where on the right side, you've got a smaller stitch length, and then when you go closer to the plus, you're at a larger stitch length. And that gives you, again, access to these other stitches on the green row of your menu. Lastly, I want to talk about the reverse stitch and how that works. This lever will function as long as you have it pressed down. So you can just do one stitch and it'll do just one stitch back, or if you need to do 10, 20, however many you want, unlimited amount, that will work as long as you have it pressed down. And finally, I want to show you how you'll use this darning plate. Darning is another term used for free motion. And so on the Zest, you can use it for free motion, but it's slightly different than other machines, where you'll put this plate on, this is kind of the old-fashioned way of doing it, and that is set with these two little inlets here and the pins that are located on the darning plate. So just go ahead and find it to seat it, and then press it in, and that covers the whole feed dog section. So what that allows you to do is, if you have fabric on top and maybe you've got your extension table, or you've even added more of an extension area with a cabinet or an additional extension table, you'll have all of this space and ability to move your fabric in the motion that you want, rather than just the straight or backward technique. So, you know, if that's any area of exploration for you, you'll do that with the darning plate. Just make sure that it's set correctly before you even start. Okay, so now that we've gone over the parts, the accessories, and preparing to sew, we're gonna get into some basic sewing. So first up, we've got the straight stitch, the most common stitch known to man. What we'll do is, on the front of the machine here, we'll have certain settings that we need to set. A is gonna be a straight stitch down the middle. B is gonna be on the left side. So you can use either of them, doesn't matter. You're gonna wanna make sure that you have the zigzag foot, which is what we have on our machine right now. We're gonna set our tension between 2 to 6 is what your instruction manual will recommend. Again, I find myself on 4.5 most of the time. So whatever you need for each fabric, that may change slightly, but I would recommend starting at somewhere between 4 to 5 and then making adjustments as necessary. On length, we can be in between 1.5 to 4, and for today, why don't we do 2.5? So I'll give you a brief demonstration of that straight stitch. I always start with the needle down in the fabric. Seems to work better that way. Here's that reverse stitch operation. Make a lock stitch at the end. And then here's a little trick for you too. You can cut your threads on the back of the presser foot lifter bar on that little inlet. Okay. While we're talking about the straight stitch, why don't I show you the difference in length and how that translates. So let's start at 1.5, do a center needle position back on A. And you'll see after I've completed this, the difference in what this length does. I'm just gonna slowly turn this length higher so that you can see the dramatic differences between, you know, a 1.4 stitch length and a 4. Oh, I didn't cut that all the way. All right. So it might be a little hard to see. Right up here is where we started at a 1.5, and then we gradually increased that stitch length to a 4, and those are millimeters. You can make these choices based on the look that you're going for, or perhaps the fabric that you're working with. Okay, so I made an error, even after years of doing this. I mispronounced a word. So earlier I was talking about our tricot stitch, and it's actually pronounced tricot. So just so you all are aware, and you can learn from my mistake. So what we'll do for the tricot stitch is we're gonna have your pattern selector on D, and we're gonna move the stitch length. Let me look here for a, let's do a 1.5 is generally where I like to have that. And tension, we're gonna lower to 4. This is a stitch that's generally used for stretch fabrics, and it's used for finishing those edges to prevent puckering. You'll also cut it usually after it's stitched, but I got pretty terrible scissors on me today, so we're not gonna do that. Let me show you how it works. What it ends up looking like is basically a zigzag, but since it's done in multiple points, it's good for stretch fabrics. All right. And again, if you needed to adjust the tension, I can see here a little bit of puckering. I'd be able to, you know, maybe move that the tension lever down to eliminate that. Moving along, we're going to be talking about the knit stitch, which is you know, ideal for your swimwear or yoga pants, anything stretchy that you might be using. You need strength and elasticity for that type of fabric if you find that you're having some trouble with that fabric. Navigate to our G pattern selector, as I have here, and we're gonna be in the stretch stitch menu. So make sure again that the length is gonna be on the plus or minus SS green length on your knob. That means that it's gonna be doing this stitch here. And I'll show you how that's performed. Let's just start with our needle in the fabric as we always do. Because this is stretchy fabric, if necessary, you can change that. You can change how it stitches out. Also, it's worth mentioning, I changed our tension down a little bit as I was practicing this stitch off camera, and found that a tension of 2 worked pretty well on just this single layer of fabric. A fun tip, you can increase your tension if we were increasing the fabric in this particular stitch and fabric combination. Clip it so you guys can see it. And there we have very strong and elastic stitch. Okay, now that we are past a couple of the stretch stitches, there's only 2 left, so bear with me here. We've got the triple stretch stitch, which will be useful for crotch and armhole areas on clothing and alterations, as well as backpacks. So to get set up for this stitch, you'll be on A. You're going to want to have the zigzag foot attached. Tension between 2 to 6. I'm at 3.5. We'll see how that works with a dual layer piece of fabric here. And then the length is on that same green stretch stitch part of our menu. Let's go ahead and get this stitched out so you can take a look at it. Now I was taught this also is referred to a saddle stitch because of its usefulness in leather and ultimately and historically for saddles. This is a really strong stitch. You'll see that this fabric I have here is pretty elastic, pretty stretchy, but with this triple stretch stitch done on it, it hardly moves at all. So great to kind of tie down and encapsulate this stretchy fabric. All right, last but not least of the stretch stitches, we have our rickrack stitch. Great name. For this one, you're gonna be changing it over to selector C, and you'll still have your zigzag foot on like we do here. Tension 2 to 6, same stretch stitch icon on your length. Let's get going. It looks like the tension I picked works pretty well for this dual layer application. So you can think of this as an extra reinforced zigzag as well. So some of these stitches on this stretch stitch menu exist for the fact that when you're dealing with stretchy or elastic fabrics, you need to apply more thread in order to secure it down in comparison to, say, cottons, muslins, easier fabric to work with where you don't need as much density of your thread to complete that stitch. So now that we have made it through all the stretch stitches, we're going to talk next about how to create a buttonhole. For that, you're going to need the sliding buttonhole foot, and there's a couple things to take note of there, but don't worry, we'll slow it down and make it easy to digest. You're going to want to make sure you have that foot attached first. Secondly, you'll set your tension to a 4 is what your instruction manual recommends. You can deviate a little bit, but that's what we're going to try for today. You'll have your pattern selector on the number 1 here, but we'll actually be using stitches 1, 2, 3, and then back to the middle for step number 4 of our buttonhole. This is what we call a 4-step buttonhole. The length is going to be somewhere between 0.5 to 1, and when it comes to your fabric, you'll want to have marked it already for the size of your buttonhole. I just made a generic marking here with my Sharpie that was handy, but what would be more ideal are our friction pens or anything that you can dissolve away with iron to make that go away after it's been stitched. I've also put some interfacing. I'm using a tearaway stabilizer in between my stretch fabric to make it a little tidier. That's what's recommended so that all of the density of the stitches gets laid out properly. So this will go underneath the fabric, or excuse me, underneath the fabric will go underneath the foot. And we're going to line this marking up on the left side of this sliding mechanism with the top marking on the inside of that foot. And both of those are going to go right where the top of our fabric marking is. So in this case, it's my Sharpie. And I can move it around a little bit as I get ready to stitch this. I can move my needle and make sure I'm in the right spot don't start if you're not positioned correctly. I need to snip this thread real quick. It's a little frayed. There we go. Okay. So I'll check again. I'll put my foot down, see how well I've lined this up. Not bad. It's in the marking. And then with our needle in the down position, we're gonna go through step number 1. And once you get down to the bottom of your marking, you will stop with the needle in the up position, shift to number 2 on your pattern selector dial, stitch 5 stitches, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, with the needle in the right position, so I should actually have stopped 1 before that, but that's all right, we did 6 instead of 5, and then move over to number 3. What that's gonna do is it's gonna now start stitching back to the top. And then you can just check your markings, make sure you are at the top, and once you are, switch over to the middle again, which is steps 2 and 4. It's used for both steps. And so now that we're at number 4, we'll do 5 stitches in between those 2 and stop with the needle in the up position at this point. That's done. We can move it out of the way, grab our scissors, trim it, and see that I was able to line that buttonhole up with the markings on my fabric. So that's how a 4-step buttonhole works. Next up, let's talk about our blind hem stitch. For this practice, we're gonna need to remove this foot and put on the blind hem foot. That's what it looks like. It has this white guide, which allows us to line up the point of our stitch. And it rotates with this little wheel right here. You'll see that that changes the distance that the white and the metal meet. Go ahead and set that in and see what kind of distance we need. I'm just gonna kind of make a little bit of a pseudo blind hem stitch, but normally when you need the access for something like this, you would know what you'd be using it for on a piece of clothing or a garment exactly. I'm just going to kind of make a bit of a fake fold here, and we'll see how well I can do that. With this stretch fabric in the moment, I think I'm gonna change it, but you can use any type of fabric. Let's just use this blue fabric. And just for contrast sake, I think I'll do it on top of the stabilizer so you can see the point a bit more. It'll be a little more defined. You can see it clear this way. This isn't how I would actually use the stitch, but it'll show the demonstration of it. So for our blind hem, we're gonna navigate to E or F. You can use either E or F, doesn't matter. It's just a preference of which style you might want. Play around, see which one you like. Tension's gonna be between 1 to 3, so I'm gonna mark mine at 2, and then length is also between 1 to 3. And so let's try 2 there as well. The whole point here is you wanna make sure that your needle starts on the right side or the outside of the hem. So that's where this comes into play, turning the wheel a little bit to make sure that I can line it up with where my needle meets that fabric. So I got it wrong. We actually need to go the opposite way. So we need to tighten that up so that when my needle comes in on the right side, it's actually meeting the stabilizer or this white fabric here. It's just gonna meet it every couple stitches. That's how these stitches are formulated, is you have a point and then you have the inside of the hem. And what that'll do is the blind hem part is when we reveal it at the end, you'll see how that works. And this is something you can look up better videos than mine on. It's not something I'm particularly talented in, but you know, YouTube is your friend. Check out some other people that do this better. I was a bit off on how that all connected on the white, but the idea is when you reveal the inside, you just see the pointed part there. So although this seam is much more reinforced than it allows your eyes or the person viewing this from the inside to see, it kind of hides that and makes it more of a trick. It's a bit of a secret on how someone, you know, made this when you're, say, presenting it to whichever party you are. So again, you know, just search for blind hem foot, you know, specifically on the Zest. I think Baby Lock even has some videos out there that talk about this at length, or at least, you know, the instruction manual, some other parts of support that you can access. And that kind of brings me to the end here. You know, the instruction manual is your friend. I used the instruction manual for this format, and inside it, you'll find more stitches and more help. We didn't quite go over everything, and I just thought for the sake of the most common stitches, we'd focus on that, but you'll find more in the instruction manual, as well as maintenance tips like how to clean and oil your machine, and troubleshooting. So they have a nice chart there, so you can start to see if your machine's acting a certain way, the cause and effect, and what you can try to mediate that. So that's been it. I hope you enjoyed it. We're here for you every stitch of the way. Please give us a call or visit our website. You can call us at 719-596-1165. And our website is myersewing.com. That's spelled MYERSSEWING.com. I'm out.